Good morning. My name is Lima Pasha. I'm an executive wellness coach, organizational consultant, and mindfulness facilitator. I'm so excited to be joined today by Dr. Janelle Green. We're going to talk about women in the workplace and like the evolution of some of the experiences that we've had over the decades, some of the challenges that women have experienced in the workforce as we've climbed the corporate ladder. And then even in Janelle's case, she became a doctor and a surgeon. So she has her own unique experiences. But these challenges are things that we don't want to just balance them. We don't want to integrate them, but we want to live a full and fulfilling life. So in this episode, we're going to give you some strategies on how to be more resilient so that you can live a full and fulfilling life, and not just work-life balance, but a whole life that is mind, body, and soul wellness, taking to account your whole inner being self and aligning your wellness, power, and purpose. So with that, we're kicking off releasing habits that no longer serve us and replacing those with healthy habits. We'll talk about this today. And then if you want to learn further, I have released a book called Activate Your Wellness that includes 7 different specific exercises that you can incorporate into your life to help you create a more joyous, fulfilling life. So I want to kind of lead in by talking about some of those experiences that I've had in the workforce. I feel like I started early in my 20s in government and corporate as well. And I was very much an observer of the older generation. I listened to what they had to say. And then I also listened to what my grandmother had to teach me about how it was different. You know, when women got pregnant, my grandmother told me that they weren't allowed to work. Once you found out that you were pregnant, you had to like quit your job. This was like in the 50s and 60s because there was a law. And then also we weren't allowed to wear pants. And that was very recent. There are lots of people that are still working that remember that rule. You had to wear skirts, you had to wear stockings, and it was limited, the types of positions that you could get. So now we're leading in the workforce. There are more women than ever before. And at the same time, we're also having more health disparities, more heart disease, more high blood pressure, and other illnesses. And some of that is impacted by stress. So we want to learn skills to manage stress. I have some stories that I can share about some of the experiences that I had directly that were stressful for me. For one, the first time I got pregnant when I was working, I remember telling my supervisor at the time, and she said to me, I was afraid that you were going to tell me that, or something, you know, negative. And it was so sad to me that I went home crying. I went home in tears. And so I didn't have a pleasant experience during that time frame. So we as women, it's important for us to continue to talk and circle together so that we know some of the challenges that we're experiencing, that it's normal to continue life, to have children, to work, to do these things. And you need a coach and a guide and friends that can help you so that you don't experience those challenges alone. Janelle, I want to ask you, what were some of the experiences that you've you had to be resilient in as a woman in medicine and in the workforce?
Well, as it relates to just being a mom, I was listening to your story, and as you spoke, it reminded me of my experience. And I'm thinking, what was my experience during my first pregnancy when I went to tell my postdoctoral mentor, because at the time I was in postdoctoral school, and I remember being terrified and having to let her know that I was going to have a baby. And so I may have been maybe 4 months, I think, before I actually disclosed that information. But contrary to your situation, I was pleasantly surprised and actually found out that another colleague who was also in the postdoc program with me was also pregnant. And so after that, we ended up finding out we went to the same doctor and had many visits together because we were both going to deliver at the same time. But the reason why I believe it was a pleasant experience is because my mentor at the time was also a mother. Her children were raised. And so there are many challenges, but it does help to have a diversity in the work field. And she was someone who understood and realized that having a child did not mean that you are disabled. It didn't mean that I was incapable. So her expectations for me did not change up until the point where I expressed to her, I need to take time off. We're getting ready to have the baby. And she was completely understanding of that. And it was actually a very good work environment. I shared an office with someone at the time, and this was someone different who I think she had delivered maybe 3 months before me. So we would bring our children to work, set out a play mat, set up our laptops, and go to work. And we shared tips with one another. And it was a really, it was a pleasant environment in that situation. But there were other times where before I even became pregnant, where I would observe different mothers. And this was, times around clinic, podiatry clinic, or in the operating room, where it was a stressful time when you had to decide, okay, can I actually participate in this surgical case? Because we're going to be using radiation in the operating room. We need to look at the bones and look at the fracture. And so can I, should I be present here? Do I have the proper, what we call gown, the radiology equipment? Do I have the proper lead on? Do I need to apply double lead? And so that's a lot of weight that you're putting on just to be in the operating room. Can I participate in this surgery because my stomach is too big? Those are different things that we, had to think about. How long is the surgery going to last? Because I need to go pump. So those are other challenges that we encountered, particularly when it had to do with being in the operating room and performing surgery. So some situations were easygoing because people in that environment maybe had a previous opportunity to understand whether they were male or female, carrying, having a child in the home, having a young child. Or sometimes people didn't understand, the work calls for certain things, being able to lift legs or turn a body a certain way. And so sometimes, depending on where you are in the stage of pregnancy, it may not be best for you to participate in those. And so it's a challenging choice to decide when you are going to have a baby, especially in the medical field, if you are doing procedures.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it all depends on the work environment and if the person that's supervising you is trained and sensitive and understands how to talk to their employers.
Mhm.
So that sounds really good that you had a little support. Some of the other challenges that women face in the workforce are microaggression. And I liked how you spoke about how you handled that, how you were resilient in with those experiences. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, I don't know if I shared this with you in the past. There were many microaggressions that we encounter along the way. I remember being a student and being cold in the operating room and expressing that. And the attending surgeon said to me, "Aren't you from Africa? You should be warm." And I remember afterwards going and crying in the closet, in one of the closets in the hospital. I didn't know how to handle that. And it's definitely something that you have to grow and learn how to deal with. I also, I've had situations where I have been referred to as an angry Black woman to my face. And so I
You?
will not, exactly, me. And anyone who knows me knows that that is not my character at all. Like, just that's, when I tell people that, they're like just taken aback. But yes, I have. And, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you, I just burst into tears because I just could not believe it. And how do I handle that? It's a practice of prayer and meditation, being resilient, figuring out how to release these. So energy, right, is or emotions are energy in motion. So how do we release this negative energy from my body, whether it be through running? I've taken up different sports, tennis. I love skating. Coming home and talking about this with my family members. I'm really being able to have someone to bounce these ideas off on. And then we also live in a culture where there is a lot of information. People are using YouTube and different avenues of social media to communicate their experiences. And so just being able to tap in and hear someone else that has a similar experience lets me know that I'm not alone in this. It lets me know that it's okay to release this. And really, it's helpful to develop practices so that I constantly am reminded of who I am, or I constantly remind myself of who I am through prayer and meditation and really spending time with loved ones. And then also writing people up, writing it out, going to my director or my boss and writing things out. But you can only do that to a certain point. Sometimes people just don't get it. But there were situations where I wrote it out and explained, things from my perspective and what was going on. And even that process was helpful for me.
That's great. That's a good outlet. Some of the microaggressions that I've noticed, sometimes it seems small, but it can be big. Like uh, even the cold that you said, how cold it was, the temperature that sometimes people keep it in the office, if it's like 60 degrees and they know everyone else is kind of miserable, like we're all in blankets and we're just cold. That's what I call a cold organizational culture. um, but sometimes it could be as small as people not even speaking to you,
Hmm.
addressing you, acting as if you're invisible and they don't see you, or in other experiences, they might stare at you strangely or something like that. Those are even microaggressions that just, if you're not strong in your character and who you are, they can make you feel uncomfortable and they can shift your energy. So what I found is I developed 7 steps to wellness, and I have a book about it. It's called Activate Your Wellness: How Women Leaders Go from Drained to Reclaimed. This came from me working to develop these practices over a decade and doing lots of research and what worked to help me to maintain my energy and my vitality, even amongst the stressors and microaggressions in the workplace. So I'm, enjoy helping people with that because it gives us a chance to kind of work together and share resources and experiences and create a framework so that when a staff member comes in and says, I'm expecting a child or something, people are trained on how to be considerate of their staff, how to be mindful. Mindful communications is a chapter in my book in communicating with compassion to kind of stop this suffering that we're continuously experiencing in the workforce. So we want to dive deeper into how do we release what no longer serves us and create new healthy habits. I'll kind of expand on the chapters that I'm covering in the book. And one of them, as I reference, is mindful communications, but the other is belly breathing and meditation, being aware of your breath, just taking a few minutes out. And this can be incorporated into your day to help you so that you're not stressed out and spewing microaggression, or if you are experiencing it, it doesn't settle in your body and cause toxins and disease that stress has been known to contribute to. Another thing that we talk about is building community, and also wound wellness, being aware of if you're experiencing fibroids and things like that, what to do, go to your doctor, and also learn a healthy diet and exercise that can help you to, if you have fibroids, to release fibroids, or take the steps that you need to do in order to do that. And if you do have surgery, then you can stop those from coming back by creating a healthy lifestyle. Janelle, I know that you have a plant-based diet, and I wanted to ask you what inspired you to take on a plant-based diet?
Well, I paid attention to how I was feeling when I ate certain foods. So, kind of initially, it started off as just me doing different types of fast. So, I think in one thing that I did a 21-day fast from meat. So, I gave that up. And at the end of that fast, I remember taking a trip. I was flying across country, and there happened to be one of my favorite steakhouses in the airport that I was flying through. So I said, I'm done with my fast. It might have been day 22. I was done with the fast. And so I said, I'm going to have a burger on the way home. I've got about 6 hours to fly. So I got the burger. It was good, but I was also very sick for the entire plane ride. And then I was, I'm an inquisitive person. So I thought, well, what is this? If I didn't have it for a while and then I started to, and then I ate it, and now my body's responding in this way, there's something maybe wrong with that. And then I started to learn, I started to read different books and get more information, and just really began to understand how the different hormones in animal products, how the fat in animal products, how it affects our body, how it affects my mood, how it affected my menstrual cycle, how it affected my if I had fibroids. During my first pregnancy, I had 2 small fibroids. And so just understanding how those different foods contributed to my current health status. And then one of the things that just kind of blew my mind was just that our body just makes cholesterol in itself, so we don't need to eat it. And so when I realized that I was just eating cholesterol and it was having this effect on my body, I realized that there were some changes that needed to be made. When I understood that I could have periods that weren't painful and that wasn't a normal thing, then it encouraged me further to move into understanding how food plays a role into our health. Even if when I was going to the doctor, all my labs checked out normal, I knew that I wasn't necessarily feeling the best. And so after I learned more, then eventually I switched over to a plant-based diet, but it's definitely not something that happened overnight. I would say for me, it was probably like a 3-year period. I think the last thing I gave up was pepperoni pizza.
That's wonderful. Yes. Um, I eat a primarily plant-based diet. Occasionally I have seafood and I'm, deciding whether or not I want to eliminate seafood completely, but that's kind of one of my favorite things to have as a treat when I go out to like a restaurant or something. But other than that, I'm primarily plant-based. And the reason for that is I found that I have so much energy and then I crave sugar less. Before I became more plant-based, I used to eat lots of cookies and things like that. But now I think with the incorporation of a more fiber rich diet, I don't crave those things as much. And it's easier for me to go for periods without eating. I'm not like feeling hungry all the time. I'm feeling more satiated. And like Janelle said, it took time. So if you're trying to change your diet and you're struggling with it, don't, beat yourself up because the journey for me is I've never eaten pork throughout my life. I grew up not eating it. Then when I was right after college, I gave up beef. So I already didn't have those two things. Those weren't really factors. And I never really I never really loved chicken, even though I ate it. I was just one of those people so it wasn't hard for me to give that up. I think the last thing that I tried to give up was dairy products, but I just found a love for my body and the human body and just understanding how I felt when I ate different foods. And I just wanted to feel good. For me, that's what it was about. It was about a journey to feel better and to be free from, digestion issues. And also one of the challenges that I had, I didn't realize it as a child that I was allergic to dairy, but I would always be thirsty and I would always be like clearing my throat going, and I didn't know why. And then sometime in the winter, I would get like swollen glands. And then I found out that I was allergic to dairy and that's why that was happening. And then even after that, I still kept consuming it. But then once I stopped and I didn't have that dry throat and that thirst and that having to clear my throat all the time, I was like, okay, that's what's going on. It was that simple. And so if I do decide, okay, I'm going to have yogurt or something like that, I'll know what's going on. So please be mindful and listen to your bodies. In my book, I talk about our mindset for abundance. So having a mindset for abundance, part of that is replacing the habits with nourishing habits. And that way you're not thinking you're punishing yourself because you're replacing bad habits with good habits. And it helps in the workforce. One of the things I did, I had some big salad containers and I would fill those up with lettuce and other vegetables. And my protein at the time was beans or nuts. And then, make a healthy salad dressing. You have to be really careful of the salad dressings because when I first started, that was one of the challenges that I didn't notice. I was like, well, I'm eating healthy. Why do I have a headache? And I didn't read the labels on my salad dressing. So that's step number one is read the labels because lots of people are allergic to things like monosodium glutamate and other processed ingredients. And I'm definitely allergic to monosodium glutamate. So that could totally ruin your day if you're trying to have a healthy salad and you're sprinkling it with fatty salad dressing with processed chemicals on it. So with that in mind, Janelle, we're going to talk about saturated fat and sugar. That's one of the things we want to release in the new year. We want to eat less sugar and less saturated fat, eliminate it altogether if possible. Dr. Green, can you tell us a little bit more about the benefits of releasing saturated fat and sugar from our diet, and maybe some tips, some quick tips on how we can do that?
Sure. So I'll say the benefits come with understanding what saturated fat is and the risk. So just really quickly, I'll say saturated fat is most commonly found in animal products, meat, eggs, and dairy, and shellfish. Shellfish, saturated fat contributes to high cholesterol. You might go to your doctor and your doctor might say you have high cholesterol or you have high LDL, so lipodensity lipoprotein. That's something people are familiar with. When you have high cholesterol, your blood vessels don't open and close like they normally should. You can get high blood pressure. Your blood vessels might also be blocked completely. And so blood can't get from one place to another, and they're blocked with the cholesterol. The blood vessels may also, that blockage may also break, and that fat can go to another part of the body and can contribute to a stroke or a heart attack. So in addition to that, high cholesterol can contribute to dementia because these tiny little blood vessels aren't getting the blood that they need to. And then there's obesity, right? So then you ask, what are the benefits of removing saturated fat from your diet? You free yourself from being at risk to the number one killer in America, which is heart disease. You free yourself from or lower the risk of you having being obese, high blood pressure, heart attacks, stroke, dementia. So those are some of the benefits of removing saturated fat from your diet, are all those things. And there was a second part to your what was the other?
We wanted to talk about sugar, and this is a big kind of, I won't say a hot button, or, it's so interesting. Like, I've talked to people about sugar, and because sugar is similar to a drug, it's like hitting the panic button, like, oh, tell me anything but give up sugar, because that's how people are coping with stress. That's how people are band-aiding some of the things that they are experiencing in their life. And with mindfulness and meditation and other practices, we kind of get in touch with what's really going on deeply instead of medicating it and band-aiding with sugar. Over time, you learn to manage stress in more beneficial ways, like we talked about exercise and other things. So I understand what people experience when you tell them, you got to give up the processed sugar. Janelle, you work with people with uncontrolled type 2 diabetes, so you know the importance of it. Can you elaborate more on that? And then even the inflammation that it causes in the body, it's just a domino effect, right? I guess they have a sugar brand called Domino.
Inflammation, dehydration of blood vessels. And just to kind of follow along what you say, I have to quote my mentor, Lisa A. Smith, and she says, sugar is the answer. It is not the problem, right? Because people are consuming it because they might be triggered. They're trying to soothe themselves from all of the pain, right? So let's get down to the problem. So absolutely. Yeah, sugar, especially high fructose corn syrup, it contributes to the development of more fat around your stomach area, around your liver, which then contributes to all of the things that we just talked about, increases your risk of heart disease as well. In my patients with type 2 diabetes, one of the things we've talked about before is how, saturated fat, that fat blocks the sugar from getting into the cells where it needs to be, so that the body has the necessary energy to function. And so that sugar then increases in the blood, and you develop eventually, insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, and then you have full type 2 diabetes. And that elevated blood sugar can contribute to, as you mentioned, Lima, to a drying out of the blood vessels. So the blood vessels can become it's a preservative. So sugar is a preservative. So anytime you think of, food or jellies that you preserve, it dehydrates them. So it dehydrates your nerves. It contributes to neuropathy. Neuropathy can you can have symptoms in any part of the body that has a nerve, right? When I talk to my patients, I let them know diabetes is a whole body disease. It's not just, oh, your feet are a problem, or it's not just your eyes or your kidneys. It's a whole body disease. Another thing I go through with my patients is their risk spectrum of vascular disease. So we look at their large vessels called macrovascular disease, like have they had a heart attack or a stroke. We look at their smaller vessels, microvascular vessels, their eyes, how their eyes are functioning, how their kidneys are functioning. Do they have burning, tingling, pins and needles sensation in their feet? We also look at what's called functional microvascular disease. So what's the function of these small blood vessels, and do they have enough what's called nitric oxide? So are they able to dilate? Because a lot of times they just stay compressed and they don't get big. And so people will have problems like reflux disease and not even know that that's a problem related to a vascular disease, or they may have GERD. Like people walk around, they burp and their food comes up, or they get extremely nauseous. People don't even realize that that's a vascular problem. And those are very common in people with type 2 diabetes.
Wow, that created a visual picture in my mind about, you were saying the blood doesn't,
Yeah, so I mean, in microvascular disease, it's the vessel's supposed to open and close, pump open and close, And so what happens is there's this component, it's called nitric oxide, and it helps the vessels to dilate so that blood can flow through. You could think of it like a freeway. You need the freeway, an expanding freeway. You need it to expand a little bit so the blood can get through. But if it's always, if all you're functioning with is a one-lane highway, and the one-lane highway is really small to begin with, and you're not going to be able to get the car through or the blood through in the way that it needs to, because the blood vessel is not moving. So the blood vessels, there's a muscular component to it, just like the muscles in our body allow us to move and do different things. The muscular component of blood vessels allows them to open and close. And when we consume certain foods and live certain lifestyles, that doesn't happen. And so they stay constricted, and that can contribute to chest pain as well. Even before you may have symptoms of high blood pressure or a heart attack, you may have constriction of these small blood vessels, and they don't expand in the way that they need to. And that can contribute to chest pain, which is very common.
Wow. You reminded me of, we used to talk about the itis when people eat a big meal. So maybe that's why I have more energy with the vegetarian diet, because after I eat, I have energy. I'm like, let's go for a walk. But when you eat those heavy meals with a lot of saturated fat, I guess maybe what's happening is your blood is not able to flow. So you're not able to flow either, right?
That's part of it. And then the blood rushes from different parts of your body, your brain, in order to try to digest all of this food and process it and remove the toxins. Like your body is working in overload. All this, the animal protein, all these things that you've gotten used to, your body's gotten used to dealing with, but really take energy away from other parts of the body.
Wow. So in my book, I talk about understanding the root cause of self-punishment and how to stop it. And it sounds like by eating a lot of saturated fat and sugar, we're saying we're treating ourselves, we're rewarding ourselves, but in essence, we are punishing ourselves. And of course, it starts as children. People might say, okay, be quiet, go over here and give you a piece of candy or something sweet, or something heavy to eat. And so I dive deeply into that in the Mindset for Abundance chapter and how to overcome that. So yes, so we've covered quite a bit today. I wanted to mention, I've been reading Bruce Lipton's The Biology of Belief, and that kind of dives deeper into our subconscious programming and what is triggering us to have more stress. And it even talks about mindfulness and meditation, the power of meditation to help you to deal with some of those stressors that you're having in your life, from the workforce to your home life, learning how to communicate more effectively. So with that, we're going to wrap up. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I want you to live a life of purpose with gratitude, visualization, and community. Go to Amazon, check out my book. It's called Activate Your Wellness: How Women Leaders Go from Drained to Reclaimed. Book me to speak at your organization. We're talking about workplace wellness and mindfulness meditation, how to communicate more effectively with your team and your loved ones. So Janelle, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Janelle Green, podiatrist and whole foods plant-based nutrition coach. I work with individuals that have uncontrolled type 2 diabetes, that are at risk for limb loss, that are just sick and tired of being at risk, that are ready to make some changes. I use a whole foods plant-based approach to help them decrease their risk for limb loss and reverse and prevent other complications related to type 2 diabetes, as well as reverse their uncontrolled type 2 diabetes.
Live a life of purpose with gratitude, visualization, and community. See you next time.